Let's talk about how you can make a better first impression at your park and why this means everything for your guest and their overall experience. I'm Alex Burke, and this is the Outdoor Alliances Podcast. Hey everyone, excited for you to be back here for another great episode. I'm excited to dive into our conversation today. I'm going to talk about how you can create a better first impression at your park. I'm going to walk through some steps from my own experience that might help lend you a hand when you're coming up with this process at your very own park. Before we get into the episode, I have a quick ask. If you're enjoying the show, all that I ask is that you share it with a friend and consider leaving a 5-star review. That really helps a lot for us to be able to spread better content. To be able to connect campground owners, operators in the industry with exciting content and guest interviews. So let's jump into today's show. This conversation around creating a good first impression in the guest experience really came to me over the weekend as I reminisced on my time back working for the Jellystone Park before I started Outdoor Alliances. And it got me thinking about my experience there and some of the takeaways that I've been sharing with clients of ours and campgrounds that we get to work with. And I thought, well, let's create an episode that'll help speak to a lot of owners that are out there as we begin to gear up for this year's camping season. And we talk around the marketing that you can use to, number one, get guests in the door, but what is the marketing that you need to do when the guest arrives to make sure that they kick off their experience and make it the best that it possibly can be. So I thought it might be helpful for me to start and share a little bit about the process that we used and some of the things that we considered, and then I'll dive into some of the importance of that and sort of the marketing implications that come with the check-in process and the way that you can convey and relate to the guests right when they arrive at your park. So when I was back in my days in campground operations, I spent a lot of time on the guest experience and guest service side of things. It's really where I got my start. And it's what I know best, is how to really connect with that guest, make them feel welcomed, and make sure that when they leave, they're putting in that 5-star review on Google, telling all of their friends, and making sure that they can book that next camping trip. So we were able to increase our numbers and improve our overall occupancy rate and our Google review and the way that guests perceived our park just by doing a few key things that I was able to implement during my time at that campground. So I'll walk through sort of from when the guest makes the reservation and how they arrive into what that looks like for them starting their stay. So at that park, when guests would arrive and pull up to the campground, they would pull up to a set of double gates. We would have somebody outside at the gate leading them and letting them know what lane they should pull into to really start off that experience. So right away, there was somebody from our team who was experienced, that was in control of the situation, and who made the guest feel welcomed instantly. And this is a big factor. It's making the guest feel seen immediately, that they haven't even yet pulled onto the property. Their tires have barely hit the pavement of your park, and there's already somebody there greeting them and making them feel like their family. That's a big deal to me. We want people to be seen. We want them to be heard. We want them to feel like they mean something and that they're part of our family. And so having that personal connection, and yes, it's a labor expense, and I get that, but having that personal connection right from the start was key. And that's a part of that marketing and that experience, is that personal one-on-one connection that you can make to that guest and their experience. After the guest arrives and they're in that lane and somebody's come up and greet them, we would say, hello, thanks for camping with us. We appreciate you, and we're glad that you're here. What's your last name? So we can go get the paperwork and help you check in and get started. The guest would give us the information that we need, and we would go back into our office and grab a paperwork packet and sort of their welcome packet of information. And this has changed and developed with the times, if you will, as to what information gets included in that packet. And this can be different for every park, depending on what's the type of customer you're caring for, what their needs are, and what are really the things that they're going to need to have a great overall experience. But for us, it consisted of several things, from their park map to information on the park hours, the Wi-Fi information, emergency contact info, the activities printout that we had on what was happening at the park. Today, this can be replaced with a campground app that you might have, and there are a number of providers that are out there who do this, and it makes it a lot easier to go paperless and just say, hey, we've got an app in the App Store, go download it, you can get all your information there. But we just wanted to give the guest a really compiled packet of all the information that they need, and we would actually walk through and spend 30 seconds and explain to them, here's what this sheet is, here's where you can find this, instead of just handing them a paperwork packet and saying, here you go, head down to your site and we'll see you. We really wanted them to feel like we were providing them all of the tools for success that they needed while they stayed at our park. And so we would explain to them on the map. It would show them exactly where their campsite or their cabin was, and it would be drawn out the exact route that they would need to go there. We'd explain to them how they would go. We would explain what the activities were, what were some of the ones, especially if we noticed if they had children, because it was a Jellystone park, we would actually go and highlight and point out, this is a not miss activity. You really should attend this. Your children are going to have a great time. Make sure that you go and see this. Here's where it is. We would actually promote to them some of the things that we knew would make their camping trip worth it. Because if I were a parent, just like if I'm going to Disney or if I'm going to a hotel and seeing local attractions, we really wanted to help them create that vacation experience. And so those 30 seconds at the front where we were able to explain the activities and those key moments really made the vacation for a lot of people. And if they were a new visitor and had never stayed with us before, and they didn't know what our key activities were and the things that really made us special, they might have missed that and gone and done something else. But instead, we made it known that this is what we're about. This is why you came and stayed with us and where you're going to have a great time. We were able to deliver the value to them in that experience at the front. So although it was maybe a little bit of a slower check-in process because we spent that 30 seconds to explain that, I would say the whole process took between 2 and 3 minutes for each guest to get checked in. It was still quick, it was still efficient, it still worked for a lot of guests, where it was long enough where they feel like they got the personal attention that they needed, where we were able to thoroughly explain things, set them up for success during their stay, and then efficiently get them down to their site. So after they would receive this check-in material, we would move through the process of doing the digital check-in. Obviously, we want to make sure that their balance is paid on the site. We want to make sure that all the paperwork's in order. We would actually have them sign a liability waiver. This is something that was recommended to us by our legal team, our lawyer and our legal counsel that we had. And this was something that we prepared and put in packets. You may have seen electronic waiver forms, and eventually we moved to that system where the guests could pre-check in and fill out these online waivers before they arrived. But at the time, we would present to them the waiver and have them sign and explain what it was. And this is another key point that I want to sort of stop and highlight, is how you go about this presentation of the waiver itself. You want to make sure that you are delivering this information in the best way possible. Although it may be a liability waiver to us to protect us from guests and guest liability, that is not the way that you want to explain it and present it to the guest. That presentation matters. Think about the times that you might have stayed at a hotel or a place where they had a really long liability waiver or really almost weird nuanced rules during the stay. You probably felt like you were a criminal and that they didn't trust you to do what you said you were going to do at the park. Keep the site clean, don't move the fire pit, get quiet during quiet hours, all the things that a respectful camper should do. Have, etiquette and be nice around your other travelers. Essentially, everybody just wants to have a good stay, right? And if the park makes it seem like you're not going to provide that good stay and that we're treating you guilty before innocent, then you're not going to have that experience from the start, and you're going to feel like you're walking on eggshells the entire time during your stay. And that's not the type of experience that we wanted to deliver from the get-go. We wanted to let them know that there are rules in place. We are going to enforce them, but we want to deliver it to them as, more of a positive thing. And that experience of delivering that information and that messaging is key in the beginning of that experience. It sets the relationship up right for success, and it really allows you to not be in a situation where the guest is angry or disappointed before their stay's even started. And so the way that information is presented was one of those key changes that we made. And overall, guests were a lot happier. The amount of rules that were being broken did not go up. We still had to obviously deal with situations as they came up, but overall, the guest satisfaction was great. Our campers were respectful of the rules and the policies set forth by the park, and overall, the guest experience was better. And that really contributed to better marketing and better relationships for those guests, is if we can do what we said we were going to do in the marketing materials that we delivered, and we got guests in the door, we often forget about what's the marketing that we need to do once they're there. And that's really what this whole check-in process is about. So for us, after the paperwork was signed, we would actually go and direct the guests down to the site ourselves. We'd actually escort them in a golf cart down to the campsite and make sure that they got set up okay. We would make sure that they fit. If they were backing in a trailer, we would help them back in and avoid any trees or fire pit or a picnic table or any obstacles in their way. We just make sure that they got set up at their site A-okay. After that was done, we had a really nice personal touch with our team to be able to upsell firewood and ice and any other things that we had right when they arrived. If a family pulled in and the dad was trying to set up the trailer, you could ask mom if she needed ice to put in their cooler after a long visit, or firewood to be able to get a fire pit going so that the family could cook dinner before heading down to the rec center to do evening activities. And it was a great way for us to just set up that relationship again and say, we're here for you. Whatever needs you have, we'll take care of them. And right now, if that's what you need, we're going to go deliver it, and we're going to go get it, bring it down to your site, and make sure that you get everything that you need to be successful. And so that delivery, yes, it allowed us to increase our revenue and be able to, make a little bit of money at the beginning of the stay, but it also just made the guests feel seen, and it made them feel like all of their needs were being met, and that really catapulted into the whole rest of their weekend when they stayed at the park. If a guest was in a cabin, one of the other key things that we did was actually have a really good local area welcome kit and some information in the cabin from when they arrived, so that it felt like it was a personal stay where they could get some personal information on the area attractions, all of the information that we weren't able to cover during the check-in process, where the guests can read through that information and decide how they want to spend their stay and what things they wanted to go and experience and do. It really just took the experience up to more of a hotel level and more of a premium accommodation option, where they were able to get that information and for us to have that professional experience. And so that was one of those things that, just makes the guest feel like they're getting what they paid for and that their expectation is fully met. Having expectations that, aren't in balance with one another, where a guest has really high expectations because of the marketing that we're doing, and then they get on site and they're really disappointed, that's really where you're going to get disappointing reviews, disappointing experiences, and where your guests aren't going to come back for future stays. So if you can control that experience up front and make sure that you're delivering a really good first impression, it's going to mean everything for the whole rest of your stay. That's really what I wanted to cover today, is just think about what are some of those things that out of my story and my experience that I laid out today, what can you pick out? What are the things that you might be able to add to your own park and your own experience? What can you change in your welcome process that might help you be able to deliver that first impression in a better way? What can you do to add staff or add personal touches or add a unique experience into your park that's going to really, make that first impression last a long time in the mind of your guests? We can do all of the external marketing to get them in the door, but once they're there, what's that process and what's that check-in like? And what are you doing to make sure that the guest has a great time once they arrive? I hope this was valuable, and I hope that some of my experience and just sharing a little bit about that check-in process was able to help you if you haven't thought about this, or if you're a new park trying to think about what that process is going to be like. Hopefully this lays that foundation for you, where you're able to put that into practice and start to see the results once you open your door. So I hope this was valuable. Really good episode on first impressions and what you can do to help make your stay the best that it can be for all guests this season. All right, everyone. I will see you back here at the end of the week for another guest interview. Thanks for listening to the Outdoor Alliances podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, and join me back here for more exciting marketing episodes and guest conversations. I'll see you back here for more on Friday. I'll talk to you soon.